Just ahead on American Black Journal, African-American women take the lead in raising money to process hundreds of rape kits. We'll hear about this new awareness campaign. Plus, we're going to talk about efforts to revitalize one of the city's most famous commercial districts. American Black Journal starts right now.
At DTE Energy, we believe that we have a greater responsibility. We believe that being part of a community means being involved in the fabric of that community, investing time, effort, and resources in the communities we serve. DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of American Black Journal.
Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson. For the past 5 years, Wayne County Prosecutor Kim Worthy has led the effort to get more than 11,000 abandoned Detroit rape kits processed. Thanks to financial donations from across the country, that number now stands at just over 1,000. Now, a coalition of black women's groups is working to raise the remaining money. They call themselves the African American 490 Challenge. That's because that's how much it costs to process a single rape kit, $490. Joining me now are two of the women spearheading the campaign, civic leader Kim Trent and public relations executive Darci McConnell. Thanks both of you for being here.
Thank you.
This is one of the sadder stories in our region, in my opinion, the 11,000 rape kits that did not get tested. At the same time, I feel like we've rallied and produced a lot of good news about people working together, about awareness, about trying to prevent this from happening again, but then raising money to try to make sure that all of these kits get tested and that people get their day in court. This is yet another example of that, Kim.
I mean, that is the positive side of this. I mean, truly, this is a tragedy. I mean, if you know anything about what it feels to be, how it feels to be a sexual assault victim, there is no more soul-crushing crime that can happen to you. And for you to have
second victimization.
Right, well, it almost a third, because even having gone through having a rape kit conducted is a very invasive process.
Sure.
And so you go through all that, and then to have your rape kit sitting on a shelf somewhere for years, in some cases, we're talking about 35 years that a rape kit sat on a shelf, there's no way you can look at that and not feel disrespected.
Sure.
So, but the positive side, as you said, is that so many women and so many people have stepped forward to say, this is unacceptable, and we're going to do our part to make sure that these women get justice.
Yeah, so we started with 11,000, we're down to 1,000. This 490 challenge. Tell me about how you plan to raise the money. What's the sort of scheme here?
Sure. So on October 6th, we had a huge kickoff with about 100 African American women at the historic Detroit Association of Women's Clubs, and those women represented a number of black female-led organizations or sororities. Your Girl Scouts, your Jack and Jill, your Lynx, all of those organizations were represented. And then we followed that up last week with a rivalry connected with the U of M Michigan State rivalry to see which team could outrace.
I remember seeing about this on Facebook, and I stayed out of it.
You're supposed to give money.
Stayed out of
repost. But anyway, we raised just over $36,000 through that challenge alone. So we're already 2 weeks in at about $40,000. So we're very proud of that. Yeah. Obviously, that's a drop in the bucket because our goal is $657,000. But we feel very good. We're asking people to have open houses. We're asking people to sign on to speak up.
Yeah.
And so we're building a very deep bench of folks to speak up and speak out.
Yeah, I would think that the hope here is that not just raising awareness, but changing attitudes about this, and not just among people in the public, but in the police department. And that's where we really have a problem with some of these kids.
Well, your colleague Nancy Cafford did such an excellent column just about the culture that existed that allowed this to happen. Right. And so we think this is a moment not only to coalesce around making sure that these victims get justice, but to change attitudes about sexual assault. To try to make our elected officials more sensitive to the need for government to really, I mean, thank goodness because of Prosecutor Worthy, we do have laws in place now to make sure that this won't happen in the future. But there has to be an entire attitude shift in the police department and in the way that we view this as a public harm, because it truly is one of the worst public harms, and it has not been prioritized that way.
But I'll go one step further. I would like to see some folks held to account. You don't get to 11,000.
Who did this, right?
341 without complicit multiple administrations, officers, you name it. And so, yes, we definitely want to put something in place to avoid that, and we want to change the culture so the victims are not treated in the way, survivors are not treated that way. But who's going to be held accountable for that? That's true. Ridiculous.
But how do we get to that point? I mean, you're talking about police chiefs over 10, 15, 20, 30 years and I think if you look at it, I mean, a lot of them just sort of figured this is the way this works. It wasn't willful, but it was negligent.
Somebody gave a best now, I don't know if it was Kim, but they said it's like your junk closet that you have all the stuff just piling up, and you know it's bad. Yeah. So you just kind of crack the door and throw it in there because there's no way.
Right.
The other way that you get to that large of a number.
Yeah. You guys are trying to rally African American women to this cause, but it's important to point out that it's not just African American women who are the victims here. These kits represent women from all over.
And this is not just a Detroit problem, by the way. That's one of the things that when we talk about raising the public awareness about this, one of the things that people need to understand, it's not as if rapists say, well, I'm on this side of 8 Mile, so I can't.
So I'll do it, right?
In fact, of the rape kits that have been tested already, what they have found is that 39 states have been touched by the perpetrators who have been identified with these rape kits. So this is a national problem. Unfortunately, the crimes took place in Detroit, but there are tentacles everywhere. And although 81% of the victims are African American women, as you said, this was not, and it wasn't even just limited to women, by the way.
Right.
I
there
mean,
are men on the list
children,
too.
men, the majority of the victims are under the age of 24. So young people, we want to get involved. This is a community-wide effort. And although Black women in this campaign are taking the lead, we recognize that everybody's voice needs to be at the table.
Yeah.
And then just real quick, so the average rapist commits between 7 and 11 times.
I was going to say, that's the other thing is that we learned from this list is that it's not just once that they're doing this. These are people doing it over and over again and getting away with it.
Well, and that's the urgency because unfortunately, because we've got the rape kits, then we've got to raise money for investigations as well because they have a new backlog within investigations of the tested kits. And so they're prioritizing based on, well, it only did, they did 7, this person did 2, or they're about to get out of prison, or they have a murder in addition to the rape, which is just insanity.
So we are not done, and even after you finished with these 11,000,
not at all.
Money.
And one thing that's important to note, for example, in Cleveland, they had 4,000 backlog kits. We had 11,341. They have 35 investigators. We have 12.
We have 12, yeah.
So
I know.
There is a lot of work that still needs to be done. And even after we raise the money to process these kits, it's very important that people know we still need to raise a significant amount of money to make sure that they get investigated and prosecuted.
Yeah. And it's the $4.90 challenge. That's how much it costs for one rape kit. But obviously, you'll take any amount that people
we have
give.
Cool things like $10 Tuesdays. People want to just give $10. That's what we've told people when we ask people to host these parties. Maybe we can get 49 people to give $10 or the other way around. So we're very open to that.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure Prosecutor Worthy is very
grateful. She was our quarterback for this rivalry.
She was really serious about it.
She was quoting Vince Lombardi emails to us.
I heard about this.
For real.
I heard about this.
Serious.
It was like,
she was not trying to lose.
That's right.
And she went up against Jamil Hill, who was known, slacker when it comes to trash talk. But
we should be clear who won the challenge. It was the University of Michigan.
Right,
the victor.
She won something that day.
That's right.
She didn't even go to stage. Why she's talking.
Listen.
But no, the real winners obviously are the people that will benefit. There was Peg Talent, who was at the Michigan Women Foundation, told us on the day of the press conference, there's a young lady who called her that day of the press conference and said, is my kit from '87 one of the ones that's going to be tested?
Yeah. All right. Great effort. Thank you guys for being here, and good luck. Yeah.
Thank you.
Coming up next, a special report on one of Detroit's most famous shopping districts. That's next, right after this look at some important moments in Detroit's Black history.
I'm Ken Coleman with a look back at African American life in Detroit. This week in 1843, a 2-day Negro suffrage convention was held at Second Baptist Church. In 1979, the Detroit Red Wings acquired free agent Brian Johnson, the team's first Black player. And in 1992, Clarence Eddings, the owner of the Bluebird Inn Bar, died at age 82. These are significant events this week in Detroit's Black history, taken from the book On This Day, African American Life in Detroit.
Part of our continuing coverage of Detroit after the bankruptcy, Detroit Public Television has produced stories on 3 historic Detroit neighborhoods. Today, we take a look at the community that became famous for its specialty stores and thriving commercial corridor. It was known as the Avenue of Fashion.
Particular neighborhoods, they have their own schools that would establish a neighborhood's identity. Shopping districts, stores. A lot of it gets infused with nostalgia as well. So when people think nostalgically about the past, trip down memory lane, they remember the shoe store they used to go to or the tailor they went to.
Detroit, when it was designed, its original footprint was to make neighborhoods almost self-sustaining, almost like towns within towns.
The Avenue of Fashion is as a human scale. It's low scale, small stores. It fits in tightly with the neighborhood around it.
I feel like it used to mean something to be able to shop in your neighborhood and buy things from people that you would know.
I think that it came about because there was this really strong middle and upper middle class neighborhood, Sherwood Forest, and the area on the other side of Livernois. To the east of Livernois was Sherwood Forest, but to the west of Livernois was very solid housing stock. This area was very heavily populated by Jewish population, young Catholic families moving into the University District, into Green Acres. There were people here who had income, and there were surrounding neighborhoods that this was an accessible shopping area for. So they made it into this kind of exclusive area.
It was the place to be. A lot of Detroit's elite and power players, if you will, shopped the area. It was famous for having specialty stores. People like Grinnell's, B. Spiegel's.
I remember, like, maybe not every weekend, but at least every other weekend, just coming down to Spiegel and walking around and looking at the clothes.
It had a defined character, and it did speak exclusivity in some ways. So that if you weren't shopping downtown, where most of us did shop, and you wanted to go a slightly different experience, or the particular kinds of products that were sold in these smaller boutiques and stores, you could come here.
It was one of the first places that Black people had wealth, so we were very conscious of keeping it in the community at that time.
Baker's is just an iconic Detroit institution. I believe one of the oldest, if not the oldest, jazz club in the world, close to almost 100 years on the planet. And it made it very unique because people were able to walk to it. It was a short walk or a short drive.
It was sort of an uncontrolled chain reaction, right? Progress led to progress, development led to development. People saw opportunities, they moved in, they opened up another store, and before you know it, you had this kind of thriving area. Then it came undone. The most popular way is to say in 1954, Northland opened, and it just sucked away all the people to the suburbs. They shopped over here at the Avenue of Fashion and said, oh, the mall opened, we'll go out to Southfield.
Well, malls made it easier, first with the construction of the highways, and then the malls, like everything's all in one place. And it was shiny and new, so it was exciting to be able to go someplace different than to be in your neighborhood shopping.
The infrastructure issues, the reliance on the automobile, the attraction of suburban malls, all of those things changed people's shopping habits and changed the way in which the neighborhood people interacted with that shopping district.
The question is, how do you build that again? Obviously, it doesn't seem it can do it on its own.
The only way you're going to change something is to invest in it. You can't talk something up. At one point, you got to put your money and your effort and your resources where your thoughts and visions are. And so if you want to change condition of anything, not only Detroit, but any other place, you got to dig in and you got to put something in it.
Now there's like this sense of emergency. So looking at all the new development that's happening in the city, people are noticing that a lot of it is happening downtown, in Midtown, in Corktown, and people are like, oh my God, we have to help the neighborhoods.
I guess in some ways you're looking at what's happening at the Avenue Fashion now, sort of an experiment, a live experiment, that with sufficient attention and care and careful planning, what you're looking for is to create some sustainable development, right? I mean, what will do that?
It starts with family, and what I mean by that is that when families get stronger, neighborhoods get stronger, communities get stronger. So it's almost starting at the root.
Most of the people that live in this neighborhood have lived here for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. It's not It's not a transient place. It's a place where people have roots. Generations of families live here. They pass the houses down to their children, and the children want to stay in those houses.
Myself and my two nephews has been working for about 3 or 4 years in developing the whole Cuzzo project. And my nephew, getting him to come back home was big for me, and it was big for the family. The goal is to build from 8 Mile to the Lodge and have it take off from there. And then act as a recruiter, recruit other businesses to make it happen faster. And then just simply begin to duplicate this in other parts of the city.
I think it actually has a lot to do with the bigger trend within kind of society, but specifically in the fashion industry, where for a really long time it was fast fashion, it was like trends coming and going, and I feel like people got tired of that and are interested in having a sustainable, not only life and outlook on ways that they can affect their community, but with their style too.
The beauty of Detroit is that Detroit is now being recognized as a designers and artists hotbed. I think the main draw of keeping and attracting young people is to come in the nature of them. In other words, the things that they're like, the things that motivate them, things that inspire them. Art, music, creativity, architecture.
The arts are something that you can share between people. So it's not so much consumerism just for the sake of consumerism. It's about those things that can bring people together.
After I graduated, I was like, if I can be where my friends and family are, like the people I love, doing the thing I love in a city that I care about, where I feel like I can make a difference, why would I at least not try to do that? There's definitely room to grow here, and if you do something great, there's people that appreciate it, where you can really make a difference in the city. Whereas in Chicago or New York, which are both great cities and I love them, but this has a different feel to it where you feel like you really make a difference if you want to.
Detroit is a blank canvas, and people feel the energy and the synergy going on. They want to be a part of it. So hanging out in Detroit and hanging out in Chicago is two different feelings. Yeah, you may say, hey, I'm going to enjoy the nightlife in Chicago, but after that's over, at the end of the day, where's the fulfillment in terms of how did you create that environment in Chicago? Well, in Detroit, you got the opportunity to create the next Detroit.
Be sure to tune in on the last Sunday in November for the final installment of the Detroit Neighborhood Series. We want to thank the project's funders, the Michigan Humanities Council and Renaissance Journalism, and a special thanks to our content partners in the Detroit Journalism Cooperative. Joining me now are two people who have a huge stake in the revitalization of the Livernois and 6 Mile corridor, University of Detroit Mercy President Dr. Antoine Garibaldi and business owner Rufus Bartell. Both of you, welcome to American Black Journal. As we saw in the piece there, this is an area that is changing rapidly. Rufus, you are a long-time business owner in that area. Tell me about those changes and how they feel at the street level.
I mean, it feels kind of surreal because when I got there over 11 or 12 years ago, by the way, Livernois is always one of my favorite streets, is that, my goal was, okay, Rufus, you got to do this by yourself, do it. But that was not the case. There were some other people there already. Larry Swaggart had a series of salons over there, so I was certainly motivated by what he was doing. But when we got over there, one of my first goals was, let's see, can we take the bars down? And so when we redone Simply Casual, we have about 14 to 17 windows. We decided to go with another technique that will give us the security that we needed and then give us something aesthetically that was pleasing.
Yeah, so it doesn't say go away or
correct.
This is a high crime area or all those negative things.
Absolutely. And then other people begin to follow suit. So we did about 6 storefronts or so without that. And then other people begin to follow suit. And then we became recruiters to the avenue that says, look, if you come here, let us show you how we've done it. And these are the people that you can talk to help you get where you want to go.
Yeah. And now we've got Live6 taking place in the area, which sort of puts Livernois and 6 Mile at the center of the neighborhood and says, let's try to grow what's going on in that commercial corridor out from there and see what we can do in the neighborhoods. And the university, of course, is a strong point institution in that effort.
Right. Well, Rufus and many of the other business owners have done a great job between 7 Mile and 8 Mile on Livernois. And we've also recognized that 6 Mile to 7 Mile has also grown. And so now we want to put more attention on the Lodge to 6 Mile, and then from 6 Mile at McNichols all the way down past Marygrove College.
Yeah.
So this effort of Live6 Alliance is one we've been talking and developing for about the last 3 years. funded partially by the Kresge Foundation. That's been right behind us, and the university has also put in some money to sustain it for the first couple of years. But we have 4 primary goals: placemaking, and that's really to get the stakeholders, the individuals who live there, involved. Secondly, neighborhood stabilization. Thirdly, business attraction and retention. And then last, safety and security.
Yeah. If you were talking to someone in another part of the city that is, 5-10 years behind where Livernois is in terms of where it's gotten to recently, what would you tell them are some of the key things? What are some of the things that really made a difference over on Livernois that you could move over to Gratiot or down to Michigan Avenue?
Absolutely. I think one of the cornerstone moves would be to get involved in business organizations. On Livernois, you have University Commons, the Avenue of Fashion, Independent Business Association, now Live6, and everything flows through the cooperation and the implementation of organizations. So I would say form an organization, get organized.
So that one overarching sort of organization makes a difference, that centralizing things.
You can never overlap good. So if I'm doing something good and you're doing something good and we're 2 different organizations, we just need more good. So I say start with the organizations, and once you do that, once you get one shining light there, become a recruiter for the area.
Yeah. The university's interest in this area obviously is about the university, being in a better environment, but there's also goals in terms of just the neighborhood itself. I mean, it's sort of a two-way street in terms of the benefits here, right?
Well, the university was one of the first inhabitants of that area back in 1922 when Father McNichols created the second campus from downtown of the university. And fortunately for that entire area, some great neighborhoods have developed. I mean, everything from University District to Palmer Woods to Sherwood Forest. Bagley. Fitzgerald is an area that we want to work on and try to bring back to life. There's Martin Park, Puritan, that needs some additional assistance. So when we talk about this from a larger perspective, we're really talking about all of those homeowners becoming very actively involved. There are book clubs, there are other types of organizations that are also keenly interested in it. Even Jesu Elementary and Jesu Parish, 90 years old, and they have been a part of that community ever since University of Detroit Mercy did. So there's a lot of history there, and people want to come back. And I'm always happy to hear when people come back to the neighborhood and say, and you've said it often on your programs, about how the area has just really come alive on the weekends and in the daytime. But we really want this to be 24/7.
Right. Who are the people that you're seeing come to the Avenue of Fashion now versus before? I mean, are you seeing people from the suburbs? In the piece, we talked about people leaving the city to go to Northland to the suburbs when that opened. Are we seeing a reversal of that?
Absolutely. If I could show you my customer base, they probably represent most of the zip codes in Southeast Michigan. And what's really driving it, and for the record, I'm just so excited that Dr. Garibaldi is now at University of Michigan, because I understand University of Detroit, I understand what his background was in the development piece as a developmental kind of president that brings that excitement to the corridor as a strong, if not the most important anchor, certainly among them. But what's really happening in the neighborhoods is that people are coming out of the neighborhoods, but what's also driving is the fact that you have people who are moving into these historic neighborhoods, coming at the end of the block, exploring what's going on. So vocations, for example, we get a lot of architects and chefs that are moving into, say, for example, Sherwood Forest.
So people who are able to walk over to Livernois.
And so now they're asking for, are there any storefronts available, because I want to move one of my business to that particular area because now I live right behind the street. So we're getting that dynamics as well. So we just need to keep building upon the momentum, but we're getting all walks of life.
Dr. Garibaldi, go ahead.
Well, I would say too, we've got 4,200 of our 5,000 plus students who are there taking classes on a regular basis. We have close to 1,000 employees for all 3 of our campuses. And a good half of those are there on a regular basis. So we've seen what's happened in some of the development over the last few years, and we know that there's even greater potential going forward. And so to get everyone excited about it, I think the little things make such a big difference.
Sure.
I mean, we worked on the
thing.
streetscape.
Yes.
Was the beginning. I mean, the lights will be coming soon. We need to do some more work on the sidewalks to really make it the kind of thoroughfare that someone can walk from the lodge to 8 Mile.
Yeah.
And just a lot of other kinds of improvements that we have on our list. And Lauren Hood, whom you saw on the program, is one of our is an acting director of Live6 Alliance, and our School of Architecture is, of course, as Rufus knows, and Detroit Collaborative Design Center have been very actively involved in it. So the help is there.
Yeah, right. We just got to get it all moving in the right direction.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then, of course, the idea, I would think, is to take what we do there and move it to other places.
Yes,
in the
duplicate
city.
it.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Great program, and good luck to you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being
Thank
here.
you.
That's our program for today. Thanks for watching. You can get more information about our guests at AmericanBlackJournal.org. And as always, connect with us on Facebook and on Twitter. Plus, you can hear our program on 1019 WDET. We'll see you next time.
At DTE Energy, we believe that we have a greater responsibility. We believe that being part of a community means being involved in the fabric of that community, investing time, effort, and resources in the communities we serve. DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of American Black Journal.